but you never know if it's actually being absorbed into your system. And that's the whole purpose of consuming something, is so it can be absorbed and utilized by the cells in order to help the body grow, develop, and repair.
Okay, I want you to kind of summarize and say that one more time, because I'm really bad. This recording process, I have to actually initiate it myself, and I get so caught up in the show, I forget to hit record. So say that again, because I want to make sure that that's on the recording.
Got you. So one of the problems that we have is that we're taking herbs and supplements, we're taking pills that are supposed to help us in any type of way, but we're not sure if we're actually absorbing the vitamins and minerals from the food, from the supplements, from the herbs that we're taking, because of the mucus buildup in our system. And this is what we're seeing on the bioscan. We're seeing that people have malabsorption, but then we get down to the point where it shows that they're deficient in certain vitamins and minerals, but yet they'll tell me that they're taking these vitamins and minerals on a regular basis. That lets me know that they're not absorbing, and that they have a level of mucus built up in their system that's covering their gastrointestinal lining, which is their digestive system. So if that mucus, which is caused by dairy, that's one of the things, that's one of the main things that we grew up eating or drinking, and it causes a excessive mucus in the system, which actually makes your body acidic. Now, here's the interesting part. The milk that we've been drinking makes your body acidic. When your body becomes acidic, it starts leaching calcium from your bones. You see? So that billboard that says milk does your body good, that's a lie. Milk actually causes you to leach more calcium. So people who are taking calcium and drinking milk on a regular basis are developing osteoporosis, which is porousness in the bones from calcium leaching. So that's one of the myths. There's several myths we need to dispel as time goes on, but that's one. Milk does not do the body good. Not dairy milk. Dairy milk doesn't do the body good, but if you want to, drink milk, maybe nut milks, hemp milk, nut milk, coconut milk, cashew milk, those are better milks. They're a little processed, but the bottom line is you're still going to get your calcium, and you're not going to get the dairy and the mucus that you get from the other milk.
So I can drink my almond milk.
Right.
Okay. I like almond milk, as a matter of fact, so that's good. However, I'm going to ask you a question just real quick with, Thanksgiving and the holidays coming up, and we're all going to make cornbread. Now, almond milk is a little sweet for me to put in my cornbread, so I usually use regular milk. Is that like horrible?
Well, I guess depending on, as long as you don't put vanilla almond milk, if you just put regular almond milk, it may work out. But you also have other milks you can put in there. You can put hemp milk, or, you can try coconut milk or cashew milk. There's a lot of different milks, even macadamia milk. There's so many other milks that you can use besides regular milk than you can. So I would recommend people who are dealing with any type of allergies. If you're dealing with any type of allergies, you got to come off the dairy. If you're dealing with asthma, you have to come off the dairy if you want to see that asthma turn around. And I know that's possible because I've helped people to come off their albuterol inhalers, which is one of the main medicines for asthma. When a person is wheezing, when a person starts wheezing, they can't breathe that well, they take their albuterol inhaler, and it helps to expand their lungs a little bit better. But it's the mucus from the dairy that's causing those lungs to contract, and it's causing people not to be able to breathe. So they go to the hospital, they get shots of steroids and that, but they don't let go of the dairy. You see what I'm saying? It's like your body actually, believe it or not, your body actually creates colds and allergies to fight the dairy.
Really?
Yeah. Your body creates colds and allergies to fight the dairy. If you notice with people, that common cold, the common cold is common because it's common mostly to people who drink dairy.
So what about eggs?
Eggs is a part of the farm. Eggs, bacon, all of that stuff. Yeah, all of that is considered dairy. So a person who's vegan would not do any dairy, any eggs, anything from the farm, anything that comes from animal, even though the animal may still be living. And of course, they don't eat the meat of the animal, the flesh of the animal. And then a vegan, of course, you know, a vegetarian will eat the cheese. Of course, cheese is a part of that too, because I know a lot of people love cheese. And that was my big thing too, was coming away from the cheese pizza. But cheese, dairy, milk, eggs, all of that is a part of a vegetarian diet. A person that don't eat meat, but they still do dairy. But if a person wants to go vegan, they just cut out all the dairy stuff, all the milk, all the cheese, and they just, you know, be a strict vegan.
Now, I
No
don't
animal
really
products.
I don't eat much cheese at all. I really cut the cheese out, and I don't drink cow's milk at all. I only actually use it in my cornbread. That's the only time I ever buy milk, is when I'm gonna make cornbread, and I only do that basically at the holidays. But my eggs, I love my eggs, and they're a good source of protein, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They're also a great source of cholesterol. And, you know, it's funny because these products, we grew up eating them. You know, we grew up eating the eggs, bacon, the cheese. I mean, it was just what we were used to. It was our culture growing up. So it's hard to pull away from something. But then you start learning that everything that we ate growing up led into some of the issues that we're dealing with now in our 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Yeah.
But it was all connected to our original diet. And not only that, as we, you know, lead into the topic, it also affects our emotional balance, you know, and it creates a lot of imbalance, especially in women. Fibroids is the result of an emotional hormonal imbalance. And that one of them hormones is basically estrogen. You know, a lot of women have excessive estrogen production in their body, but not only that, but they have different items that they consume on a regular basis, or not even consume, but even different things that they put in their hair. So you have estrogen-like substances that like mimic estrogen, but not is exactly estrogen. So these are products that you wear on your bodies, lotions, all that. A lot of this stuff has estrogen. So it's just about basically flushing out the estrogen from your system. But in order to flush the estrogen out your system, you have to have a clean liver, you know, because the liver is designed to break it down. But the diet that we grew up on actually causes the liver to become clogged up. So now you have a clogged liver, you're not breaking down the estrogen. So your body has to figure out, what am I going to do with this excessive estrogen? So say, okay, well, let me just encapsulate it. So the encapsulation is a protection. It wants to protect it from getting into the bloodstream, because once it gets to the bloodstream, it starts affecting every organ. But if they can encapsulate it, if your body can encapsulate it, then it won't get into the bloodstream, but it will grow. And one of the places it can grow is the uterus. So that's why women tend to have fibroids, multiple fibroids in the uterine, because that's the body saying, hey, I can't break it down, but I need to put it somewhere so it won't cause much damage.
Wow. And so you said the things that we put on our hair, and, you know, I'm turning the mic over to you. I'm just asking questions. The things that we put on our hair, like what things do we put on our hair that mimic estrogen?
Hair, they call them xenoestrogens, xenoestrogen-like substance. So when it's xenos, it's estrogen-like. So it mimics the estrogen substance, and it causes some of the same problems. But it's not always what we're consuming that has estrogen. It's sometimes what we're wearing. It can be lotions, it can be hairspray, it can be shampoos, it can be a lot of things that have these xenoestrogen substances in it.
Should we be looking for any particular names on our stuff?
And right. And that's you know, and I'm gonna have to give you that information so you can send that list out to people so they can know exactly, and especially women, Black women in general, you need to know what contains this estrogen in it, because if you're taking it on a regular basis, then that may be leading to the production of fibroids in the body. So yes, they need a whole list of items from what you put on your body to what you put in your body to actually get an idea of what could be possibly causing the estrogen. Because it's obvious that meat also has hormonal estrogen-like substances in it, but it's not always obvious of the products that we put on our body that has xenoestrogen-like substances in it. So yeah, they need a list for that one.
So whenever you put that list together, just post it in the public group, and so then the listeners can get to it easily.
I'll do that.
Yeah,
I'll do that, because they need to know that makes a big difference, because some women have been taking a certain product all their life, never knowing that it had certain estrogen substance in it, which means it could have been leading to some of their fibroid or hormonal issues.
Okay. All right. Well, go ahead and tell us about these mental and emotional toxins that we got stored and what it's doing to us.
Well, there's a book that I want to introduce that helps out a whole lot with this, that I'm going to speak from as well. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Breaking the habit of being yourself. In other words, being ourselves is a habit, but it's a habit that has been ingrained in us for years. So a lot of our past experiences, whether it be good experiences, bad experiences, traumas, all of that stuff gets stored in our body. Your body acts as the subconscious mind. That's why when scripture says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Well, the reason he says heart is because your heart is controlled by your subconscious mind. You know, you don't control it with your conscious mind. And a lot of people don't know that there are two aspects to the mind. There's the conscious mind, and then there's the subconscious mind. We use about 5 to 10% every day of our conscious mind. So that's what we're 5 to 10% consciously aware of our thoughts. 90 to 95% are subconscious, which means they're below that radar. They're below that conscious radar, and we have no conscious awareness of these thoughts, especially the thoughts that keeps our heart running, or the thoughts that keeps our blood flowing in a certain direction. You know, all this stuff is controlled by our subconscious mind, but we're not aware of it. And it's a good thing we're not, because if we had to think about, starting our heart or flowing our blood in a certain direction, we'd probably forget. We'd probably reverse our blood and kill ourselves. But so it's good that our bodily functions are controlled subconsciously. But here's the problem. Throughout life, a lot of our experiences get programmed into our subconscious. And anything that gets programmed into the subconscious eventually becomes autopilot. It becomes natural. It becomes your second nature, and something that you do habitually without even having to think about it. And if you think about our upbringing, that could be anything from when we was in grammar school, high school, college. We're downloading and we're observing everything and we're processing it. And a lot of the stuff that we process is not necessarily pleasant or pleasurable. A lot of it may be negative. And so here's the problem. It's okay to have positive things, and stored in your subconscious mind, because you want that to be on autopilot. But here's the problem of that 90% of the thoughts that we have every day. And they say we have over 30,000 thoughts a day. 30,000 plus. They actually say it's higher than that, but I'm gonna keep it at 30,000 plus. You're not aware of the majority of those thoughts. And some of those thoughts you had yesterday are the same subconscious thoughts you have today. In other words, you can't really change yourself unless you start changing how you're thinking. But in order to change how you're thinking, you have to get down to the subconscious level, the things that you can't see, that's making you tick, that makes you pick a certain person to be your mate, to pick a certain job. All of this stuff is rooted in our subconscious. But they say of that 90%, they say about over 60% is negative. So if that's the case, then we're on autopilot in a negative way the majority of our life, which is why we wind up becoming victims of circumstances. Because these circumstances show up because every thought is a seed. And when you plant that seed in your mind, the subconscious mind in general, it will bring forth fruit. which means you're going to wind up experiencing that which you think about. And if we go back to the book of Job, everybody knows the horrors that Job went through.
Yeah.
But Job was considered a perfect and upright man by God, but he feared God for nothing. So in other words, he had a fear, but he didn't really know God. He didn't know God until he went through that experience that he had. And he realized that which he feared most had come upon him. That which he was afraid of has come to pass. And he realized that by his own actions, his own thoughts, he had manifested his worst nightmares.
I've heard that many times before. I listened to John Assaraf and Joe Dispenza, and they talk about that stuff a lot, as and what you said, Joe, I've heard Joe Dispenza say that the body becomes the mind, because it becomes, like you said, that habit or whatever, and what you fear because you're thinking about that. So that when people say, what's your greatest fear? I'm like, fear. I don't want to fear anything, because then I'm going to manifest that. And what you're talking about is actually because I'm not religious anymore. But I believe in the law of attraction.
There we go.
And so that is a big part of everything. What you hold in your mind, what you think about, it expands. What you
exactly
expands. So I'm totally with you on this. Keep going.
And I'm not, I'm not religious either. I'm actually more spiritual, and I'm a spiritual scientist. Because even if you think about the Bible, a lot of times it's taught from a religious perspective, but it's also a scientific book. The science of that book extends for centuries, decades, and millennia. That's why whatever happened back in 2,000 years ago can still, in a sense, apply today because of the science of Scripture. And once you understand the science of it, you realize that it applies to every human being on the planet. And once you learn how to activate that science, or shall I say, how they say activate the word, once you actually activate the science of it, you can use it to your advantage. For instance, when you look at I wonder today, how do they get this large jumbo jet, this jumbo plane in the air, this big old giant heavy thing with all these people in it is flying through the air? Now I'm still amazed at that, but it's like common now. Like, oh, it's just a plane, it flies. Well, they had to understand the laws in order to be able to get that big old giant thing to fly like that, because I'm definitely lighter than a jumbo plane, but I can't get off the ground for more than a few seconds.
Right.
I'm looking at that thing fly, it's just floating through the air, and I'm like, wow, that's some amazing stuff. But one, they work with the law of gravity. We know that the law of gravity means that whether you're a good person or a bad person, if you jump off of a building, you're gonna hit the ground, because that's the law.
Yeah, that's the law.
But there's a law that supersedes the law of gravity. There's a law that supersedes the law of gravity, and that's the law of lift. The law of lift supersedes the law of gravity. So what that means is that with the right momentum, a plane, something heavy can, based upon the law of lift, it can raise up, because the capacity or the air up under it is lighter than the air up over it. And so that's why they have it aerodynamic. And so the law of lift allows for that plane, as it's moving at a certain velocity, to begin to raise up off the ground, no matter how heavy it is. It's able to lift right on up. And yeah, it's constantly moving, but it's lifting, and it's going higher. So it's really lifting to a certain point, and then it's going back down. So it's never really stationary. It can't just raise up like a helicopter, but even with a helicopter, of course, it has the propellers, and it just lifts it straight up. So it's still that's also a part of the law of lift. So what I'm trying to say is that they're working with a law in order to enhance the way that they travel, the way we travel now, based upon that law. So when you understand the law of mind and you understand how it works, what we've been realizing, that the law of mind actually has been working against us, because we knew little about it. And so when you have negative experience from the past, let's say a trauma, let's say there was a death in the family, you know, that sticks with you, and that causes a level of stress. If you have a breakup, and I know you guys are doing different topics on breakups and relationships, but breakups create a lot of negative baggage,
Oh
a lot of
God.
emotional baggage.
Yeah.
Things that happened to you in grammar school, things that happened to you in high school, all that negative experiences that you have gets recorded in your system, and it gets recorded in your body, and your body learns negative emotions.
You can wake up and think you're feeling just fine, and then all of a sudden it's like that habit of feeling a certain way hits you, and before you know it, it has overtaken you again, and you right back feeling like you were the day before, even though you think you're making progress. But yeah, that whole subconscious thing takes over and takes you right back into it.
Exactly, because what happens is something is triggered. Anytime there's something that's sitting in your subconscious, is triggered by something that's remotely similar to something that happened in the past that caused that experience to happen. So, for instance, I'm going to use good examples here because I want to stay positive on this. Let's say you were driving and somebody cut you off, and you wind up hitting the side of the wall because you couldn't clear it in time. That affected you. That experience is with you. Now, every time you drive and somebody is about to cut you off, your mind will revert back to that experience. And once it goes back to that experience, there are certain chemicals that are actually released from the brain. These are called neurotransmitters, or you can call them neural hormones. So these are neural hormones. These are hormones that's released from your brain based on that particular experience. And these hormones, turns out that they're addictive hormones, which means that when we experience these particular emotions of the past, it's because we're actually addicted to that emotion. But we're not addicted to the emotion per se. We're addicted to the chemical that's called by that name. So if it's anger, anger has a neurotransmitter that's released from the midbrain. We call it the hypothalamus. I'm just throwing out some brain parts here, but it's called the hypothalamus. So when the chemicals that are released from the brain, which is connected to that emotion, those chemicals flood the bloodstream at that moment that is triggered, and those chemicals attach to the cells at the receptor sites. Now, here's the problem. The problem is that it turns out that those same receptor sites that these biochemical or neural hormones attach to, that's coming from your midbrain, those same receptor sites are the same receptor sites that heroin attaches to.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we know that heroin can be addictive. If we know that, because we know people that have become addicted with heroin, but we never knew that we can become addicted to our own emotions, as a crackhead would be addicted to crack, or a heroin addict addicted to heroin. And so that's why I say it's more dangerous, because you can't see this chemical addiction. You only feel it. But here's the problem. It becomes such an addiction. So check this out. It becomes such an addiction that you have the power, right? By the law of attraction, right? Law of attraction states that what you think about, you can attract. So if you have a chemical addiction, the question is, how do you get to that chemical addiction? Well, you create a scene that will cause you to be triggered, to trigger the release of that chemical. So in other words, a person can actually create the circumstances that will cause them to be angry, upset, depressed, emotional, in order for them to get to the internal chemical that's in their brain. So in other words, we tend to think that something outside of us is affecting us, but we don't realize that by a law of attraction, you have the power to create your own negative circumstances. Because what you don't realize is, by the time you turn a certain age, you're addicted to the chemical of anger. So you're going to create a circumstance that's going to trigger anger. Now, here's the funny part. You're going to believe that this is something being done to you. So you play a victim. Most people play victim, not realizing the hand that they have in their own situation. Because it's a thing that's going on in the brain that most of us have never been taught based upon negative emotions. And not only that, so the second part, that's the first part. That the second part is that in your brain there are neurons. These are your brain cells. They're called neurons, and these neurons, act like circuits through which electrical impulses travel. So one thing you might have heard from Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza, is that neurons that wire together, fire together. And so when certain situations that we have in the past are experienced, there's a certain connection that occurs in the brain. They call it neural net connections. So these neurons connect together and they fire based upon that experience. And so every time you have an experience similar to that past negative experience, you strengthen this neural net connection. You strengthen that circuitry. So you become hardwired for this particular kind of event that triggers the release of this negative neural hormone that you feed on a regular basis that may not bring you a lot of joy. A lot of times it don't, but the point is that it's an addiction, a chemical addiction in the brain that's associated with our emotions and our thoughts. So now, understanding this, when you talk about detoxifying mental and emotionally, what you're doing is, one, you're starting to remove the negative thoughts from your mind that you tend to entertain. Because obviously every thought is a seed and every seed produces a fruit. Not only that, but now you have a chemical that you have to begin to weaken. You have to weaken the release of this chemical. In order to do that, you have to start proacting instead of reacting. See, when we react, we are gonna create the same situation every time we react. So that makes us predictable. I don't want to be predictable, because obviously if you know what happened in 2020, especially in America, there was the masses of people, there was a lot of people that were predictable. And so there was a lot of fear. So now we go back to the emotion of fear, because this has happened before. We've had many epidemics, we've had a few pandemics, and people experience them the same way, a very predictive way. But the end of that prediction is fear. So they have this fear, which is that negative emotion. And guess what? That fear has the power to attract the condition that they fear. So most people fear the coronavirus and wind up experiencing it because they fear it.
Right. You know what? Because I'm familiar with the law of attraction, I made so sure that I kind of kept my mind on other stuff. We focused on working out. We focused on what we were cooking. We focused on, me and my girls, we focused on so many other things besides just that, because that is what I didn't want to happen. And even now that they're having this new upsurge of cases or whatever, every time I start to think about it, I'm like, yeah, let's think about something else.
Right. Whatever you think about expands in your brain. So if you think about it, you're going to expand it. And at some point you might wind up manifesting it. But it's the fear, just like with Job, that which you feared most would come upon you. So this fear that people had, and, and in fact, a lot of people that were, quarantining and isolating and, wearing masks, wearing gloves, a lot of them wind up even still getting it. So it didn't matter what protection they had. Their mind was so powerful that it found a way to get them what they was looking for. And they weren't necessarily consciously looking for it. They were kind of indirectly or negatively looking for it. When you fear something, you're going to attract it. If you love something, you're going to attract it too. But a lot of times you don't necessarily love something that's undesirable. You usually love something that's pleasant to you. You fear something that's undesirable. So therefore, usually whatever you're fearing is probably something that you don't want to experience, but yet you're gonna attract it to you anyway.
And it
So that's why
seems
it
like
says
it seems like the negative. One of them says something about our minds. Unfortunately, our minds are more likely to think on the negative side versus the positive side.
they call that the path of least resistance. And that's that's something learned too. In other words, what you're saying is that a lot of us, can you hear me? Yeah. What you're saying is that a lot of us, and I'm in motion, so if I go in and out, let me know so I can, adjust it. But what you're saying is that a lot of us, are don't think for ourselves. We have the power of free will because God gave us free will, but we don't necessarily use it. We actually allow others to think for us. And that's what we actually have been growing up doing, from ages 1 to 7, people are thinking for us. From 7 to 13, people are thinking for us. From 13 to 18. So it's not until you probably get close into your mid-20s until you start kind of thinking for yourself, which means that you're not really exercising free will. We think we're exercising free will, but we're not. And it's not until you start understanding that now you have downloaded all of this content from your family, friends, peers, teachers, counselors, and you're a product of everyone else around you except yourself. Mm-hmm. So when you start thinking for yourself, you have the ability to uproot all of the old programs, all of the old habits, all of the old personalities that you've experienced throughout life. You have the power to uproot all of that and start to create and download your own content subconsciously. But of course, that's through affirmations, meditation, visualization. So these are some of the things that helps you to start breaking the habit of being yourself, because most people are experiencing some of the conditions that they have in their life and physically because of who they are. And you can't go to the doctor to change who you are. You can't, there's no pill to change who you are. That's something that you have to work on. Mm-hmm. But if you don't understand how to change, if you don't understand that there's a mental chemical reaction that's occurring in your brain, and there's a chemical release that's occurring in your body. If you don't understand how to alleviate these situations, then you can't break away from being yourself, which means it's going to be a challenge trying to change your circumstances, especially if they're life-threatening circumstances. Cancer manifests based upon a lot of things that's going on in the body, but liver issues come from anger. So if we spend a lot of time angry at even justified anger. So justified is if somebody did something to you and, you was innocent and they were wrong. Yeah, that might be justified. And yeah, that might be a cause to get angry. But if you have free will, do you necessarily have to get angry? You see what I'm saying? Can you proact? Can you choose not to be angry and actually choose a different emotion that's not going to saturate your subconscious with negative experiences? That's how you
haven't been trained to do that, though. We've been trained, especially in the Black community, I think. Mm-hmm. We're trained to get mad, snap off, go off,
right,
fight, mm-hmm. and
right,
and get even.
Right, grab a pistol.
Oh Lord.
Right. And that's but think about that. That's what's happening. We are a bunch of reactionary people. We're reactive. We're not proactive. Nobody's proactive, especially in their younger years. If somebody step on your toe, that ego gonna kick in, and you're gonna be like, why you step on my toe? And then now it escalates, and now there's a crime. Now there's somebody serving time. Why? Because they didn't think for themselves. They didn't proact. They just reacted, and they probably reacted, or shall I say, they might have even created that circumstance that would give them the access to that chemical. What chemical? That neural hormone that's in their brain. that's an addictive chemical. Any chemical that you're addicted to, you're going to try to find a way to get to.
So how do you break that? How can we start to break that addiction though?
Well, first it starts off by becoming aware that there is a type of reaction going on, because most people that I talk to were never aware that this was going on in the brain. So once you first become aware of the fact that people are listening and becoming aware of this dynamic, that begins the process of breaking it. Breaking the habit of being yourself starts from awareness. Know that every time you have a negative experience or a negative emotion, it's going to do something chemically to your body. It's going to change your DNA. And guess what happens? It actually starts to cause you to get sick. So yes, we can make ourselves sick with our thoughts and emotions. And so that's why, the saying, it's not always what you're eating that makes you sick. Sometimes it's what's eating at you. So now this is what that means. If something is eating at you, that means that there's something from the past that's reoccurring over and over, that's triggering these negative reactions in your body, this negative chemical in your brain, and you're addicted to that chemical. So you're going to constantly, through the law of attraction, create situations that will trigger the release of these chemicals in your brain. Will you know that? No, you won't know it, because it's all subconscious. So to you, if somebody's assaulting you, it may appear that it's their fault, but they have no idea that you may have been the writer and the author of that script. What we got to realize, if we want to affect our lives and have more control in our lives, we have to accept full responsibility that everything that's coming into our life is coming into our life through us. You're the only thinker in your universe. Now, a person can offer you a thought and you can accept it. Then now that's called autosuggestion. If the doctor tells you you have 6 months to live and you believe him, you have just accepted his thoughts. But that doesn't mean that they were your thoughts. You accepted them, but now that you accept them, now they're yours, and you will seek to and you will actually proceed to manifest them.
Wow.
So that's why it's important to rebuke. That's a good word. Rebuke. Like if you're talking to someone and you don't approve or agree with what they're saying, you have to rebuke it. In other words, you have to let your subconscious mind know that you're not in agreement with what they're saying. Because as soon as you agree with what they're saying, you accept it and it becomes your thought, then soon it becomes your reality.
I agree with that. I often, when I have one of those thoughts, as soon as that thought gets in my head, I'm like, oh no, we're not doing any of that. And I have to change that thought. When you listen to this kind of stuff as often as I actually do, I'm so conscious of my thoughts. When negative ones come, I can't help but say, oh no, we're not. No, not that.
Right. You have to, for instance, when I'm driving down the street, and I'm pretty sure you've probably heard this commercial before. It's I think his name is Glenn Lerner. I'm not promoting him, but I got to give this example. His name is Glenn Lerner, and I'm driving down the street, right? And I'm listening to the radio, and then his commercial come on. Now his commercial says something like this. It starts off by saying this. You didn't see it coming. Out of nowhere, a car hits you. Now, how many times does that commercial play throughout the day? Quite a bit. So you're listening in your car, you're listening to an affirmation from a person who's trying to sell you some type of service based upon an injury, based upon an accident. That's what he's trying to do. But what he's doing is he's offering the accident to you through the affirmation. He tells you, hey, you didn't see it coming. And it comes up and it sneaks up on you and it hits you. So now you're going through this dynamic every day. You're hearing this commercial over and over that you didn't see the car coming. 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 how many times before that becomes a reality that you hear
Man.
that you have that experience? But you're only going to have that experience because you're constantly listening to him repeat it over and over. That's an affirmation.
That's just like in Milwaukee on the radio. So, you know, I go back and forth to Milwaukee from Chicago, and I can always tell when, you know, so I know when I put the radio station on in Milwaukee, but on Milwaukee radio, there are so many freaking commercials about cancer. I'm like, why are these people talking about cancer all the time on the TV and on the radio? And it's like back to back. I turn the radio off. I'm like, I don't want to hear that crap. That is
exactly.
crazy.
Exactly. That's what you have to do. That's another form of rebuking. You have to rebuke it by either turning it off. And that's what I do. When that commercial comes on, I don't give it 2 seconds. And I immediately I become conscious of it, because here's the interesting part. You don't even have to be directly listening to it.
Right.
For it to download into your subconscious.
And that's actually the best time is when you're not actively listening.
You see what I'm saying? That's the idea.
Yep.
That's what these commercials do. You don't have to be listening. You know, even when you're driving, you don't have to be looking at a billboard. All it has to do is come into your visual awareness, and you download it. There's a term called photo reading. And that's how I really learned about this, through a process called photo reading. Photo reading is a process where you can take a book. Let's say it's a book to a class for college. You can take a book and you can read that whole book in a few minutes through photo reading. You can read that whole book in a few minutes. Now, that doesn't mean you remember or know what you read, because you're reading it a different way. You're not reading it from left to right, left to right, left to right, left to right. What you're doing is you're actually taking a picture of the content. So when you turn the page, you take a picture. You turn the page, you take a picture. So you're actually photo reading it. So you're photographing both pages of the book that's open, but you're doing it in a way where it's downloaded subconsciously into your mind, not consciously. We normally read consciously, but here's the thing. Your conscious mind only processes about 64 bits of information in a second. Your subconscious mind processes 64 million bits per second of information.
Wow.
So when you shift your focus from converge to diverge, in other words, when you converge on something, you converge on a specific point, and you're looking at a point. But when you diverge, you're opening up your visual capacity to see the whole book, and not necessarily any particular lines of words. You're looking at the whole book. So you're photographing the whole book. And when you're in this state, you know, and it's a certain skill that you have to practice in order to really learn how to do it. But when you're in this, what they call photo focus state, you can flip the pages of that book, and your mind is taking a picture of every page and downloading it. So by the time you get to the end of the book, you've read the whole book. Now, the process of activating the material is what's going to happen throughout the rest of the semester. So you read the book, you photo read the book in the beginning, and then you activate that material throughout the rest of the year, going to lectures, going to discussions, because now the material is already in your mind. And the reason I say that is because we're photo reading every time we drive. You're not converging on everything that you see when you're driving, the banners on the posts, the billboards, the advertisement on the park bench or on the bus bench. These are things that we're photo reading without any permission. Nobody's asked our permission to download this stuff into our mind. It's just in our visual field. So whatever you're looking at, normally you're driving. You're not really reading anything. You're just driving, but that doesn't matter, because as long as it's in front of you, and the fact that you're not converging on it, you're downloading into your subconscious. So that's why advertising is so powerful, because it doesn't need your permission to get into your mind in order to manifest it.
Right. Exactly. Yep. And you know what? I think most people have probably heard of photographic memory, but a lot of people don't really believe that that's possible. You know, they don't
Right.
tap into that. And I tapped into it by mistake because I do a to-do list. So I have a to-do
Okay.
list. And so I follow my to-do list. And sometimes when I'm out and I need information that's on my to-do list, and this happened, it was really funny. I was with my younger daughter and I knew I needed something. I didn't bring my grocery list. I had forgot to email myself the grocery list, but because I had looked at it, I stood there. I was like, wait a minute, let me go read my to-do list. And she's like, where's your to-do list? I said, it's in my head somewhere because I see it. I know it's in there. And so when I did it that one time, because I got everything. I got everything that I had on the to-do list. And it wasn't just one thing. I got everything that I had on the grocery list, on the to-do list, but I could literally see it. I could literally see it in my head.
Right. Like
now I
it was
use it on purpose. Now I use it on purpose because I know I can do that. So if I forget something, I'm like, hold on a second. Let me read it.
Right. You can pull it up. And that's the thing. And that's the thing about your mind is that your brain is far more powerful than the super strongest computer on the planet. We tend to think that technology is better than our mind, but we can download an infinite amount of information in our subconscious than we can on a computer before it crashes. But because we rely so much on the computers and external technology, we don't utilize this skill or this human technology as best as we should. But we are using it. We're just not using it to our advantage. We're actually using it to our disadvantage. So in other words, if you don't understand the power of your mind and the subconscious mind, then the people that do understand it are actually using your subconscious mind and they're using it for their own benefit. And a lot of times when we create, if we don't know how to deliberately and intentionally create, we're going to create by default. You know, this is a dynamic that all of us have from the time we're born into this world, and we're using it from the time we're born into this world. You know, children from ages 1 to 7, they're in what they call theta wave brainwave state, which means that that's nothing but download brainwave state. So they're downloading from observation for about ages 1 up until 7. So whatever they're observing, it becomes a part of their hardwired makeup. So if you're in a family that, like I grew up in the projects. So I'm downloading violence. I'm downloading shootings and stabbings and, you know, all the violent stuff that you turn on TV and you hear about. You used to always hear about Cabrini Green on the news until they tore down. But over there, that was normal.
Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, Cabrini Green.
Oh my God.
It was rough over there, but it was normal to us. You see, it wasn't like, okay, we see a shooting, then we go back and play in the park. It wasn't like, you know, it wasn't traumatic to us. Wow. It was common. And that was sad because that numbed us in a sense to the point where some of those kids grew up and they were shooting people because that was just commonplace. They didn't see that there was a problem with it. So that's another aspect of mental and emotional toxicity. It's not always about the food. It's about some of the experiences that you had in your life that's creating the personality you have, that's causing you to behave and do the things you do that may not be favorable in society. And so we have to somehow first understand what's going on with us and become aware of it. And then we have to start consciously flushing those negative emotions out, flushing those negative thoughts out, because that's mental and emotional toxins. So physical toxins, that's obvious. You know, certain stuff you eating, you got toxins in your food. You clean that out. You clean your gut out. You clean your liver. You clean your kidneys out. But the mental and emotional toxicity is not so easy to identify. And that's what's really causing people, like, let's say you lose weight, you know, maybe 20 pounds, but then you didn't address the mental and emotional toxins in your body. So some of the emotional situations that you experienced in the past will trigger you to start eating a certain way, which will cause you to start to gain that weight back. So in other words, you lost weight, but you never addressed the mental and emotional toxins. So the weight comes back. And emotions interfere with gland activity, in the endocrine system. It interferes with gland activity, and it causes your body to store fat instead of burning it as fuel. Now, we should be burning fat as fuel, but when you're dealing with emotional baggage, you're not burning that fat, you're storing that fat. So no matter how much working out you do, you're not going to see any weight loss because you haven't dealt with the divorce. You haven't dealt with the breakup. You haven't dealt with the father leaving the house. You haven't dealt with any of that stuff. And that stuff is just sitting in your subconscious, causing more problems. So that's why we talk about removing mental and emotional toxicity, because now all this baggage that has accumulated over time, all of this baggage is now affecting everything you do, the decisions you make, the people you draw into your family, because there's an energy connected to this baggage. That energy is not high energy. That energy is low vibration. So if you're dealing with low vibrational energy based upon the past, and this is who you are, then it's hard to meet the right person.
Right. And you know what? That's one of the things. So when people complain about the type of men that they attract, even myself. So when I attract different guys, I'm like, how on earth? But that's because I know this stuff. And so then I start to look at me. I'm like, okay, what am I doing where I'm vibrating on a level that would bring this person into my life? I got something going on. I need to figure out what's going on with me.
And that's exactly what this information is for. It's so people can get unstuck. We want to get unstuck because people are stuck. They're stuck with the same type of person, even though they may meet a new person. For some reason, they've attracted the same person from the past, or a combination of the different people from the past, because your mind is revisiting the past. If you can't let go of the past, then the past becomes your future. The past always becomes your future. That's why I'm writing a book. The name of the book is called Creating a New Past. Creating a new past. Now that's an oxymoron, because we think, okay, well, how can I create a new past? How can I go back in the past and change it? Well, because your past sits as a content in your subconscious mind, and it becomes the content of your future. So if you want to change, if you want to create a new past, you have to uproot the old content and start to put new content in there deliberately, because most of the old content came inadvertently. You wasn't trying to put it in there. It just happened because of your upbringing, because of how you was raised, because of the school you went to. That's why you can't really necessarily uproot it, because it's rooted into your everyday upbringing. But just know that until you clear out the baggage, you're going to continue to see the person in front of you or the people in front of you through the filter of that past. And the best example I can give people is that I have couples that are engaged. They come to me before they get married. They come to me before they tie the knot. Why are they coming to me? Because I'm able to take them through a premarital detoxification process. A premarital detoxification process. Now think about that. If you come to me to get rid of the old baggage, then you can probably have a better relationship longer with that person, because you're not dealing with the past anymore. You flush that out your system. So now you can see the person as they truly are, and not as how you've been experiencing people in your life. You know what I'm saying?
That's interesting. And what if after you do that detoxification, you don't even like that new person? I'm just saying. Like, I liked you with a little bit of baggage.
well, you know what? And that's probably it. You probably really drawn to that person. Now get this. You got to get this part. You're probably really drawn to that person because of the ability of that person to get you to that chemical addiction in your brain. You might be with that person because they help you to get to that chemical. So once you flush all that out and you can't get to that chemical no more, you're right. That person might not be the one for you anymore. It may be the right one you need, but based upon the fact that now the only reason that person was in your life was because they served the purpose of helping you with your internal biochemical addiction.
And
well,
that I was kind of kidding when I said it, but now, okay.
but you're right, and this is the stuff we have to talk about, because we don't know why we're drawn to people or why we hold people in our life, but we're locked into other people based upon even more so negative emotions than positive emotions. You know, the script you hand out to people is the script that serves you. And how can they serve you? Well, I need to get to this chemical that's associated with anger. So how do you get to a chemical associated with anger? Well, you, through law of attraction, create a circumstance that's going to trigger your anger. Well, who do you need to do that? Let me get my ex to do it. So now you can't get away from your ex because your ex helps you to get to that biochemical substance. So now you and your ex are constantly back and forth because there's a chemical bond between you that you can't see. Once you break that chemical bond, you have no more desire to argue, talk, fuss, fight with anybody else, because now that chemical is no longer being released from your brain. So that person has now served their role in your life.
Wow.
It's one of the reasons why when you start detoxifying your body mentally and emotionally, people start leaving your life because they was associated with those chemicals, those negative chemicals in your system. So once you get rid of the chemicals, you get rid of the people and you start to vibrate on a higher frequency, because like attracts like. So you actually start vibrating on a higher frequency and you start to draw the parallel of who you're becoming back to you. That's why I say you have to become the one you want in your life, because like attracts like. So you don't want to keep changing your partners. You want to change yourself. When you change yourself, you start to draw the right partners to you.
Right. When you change yourself, when you start to love yourself more, you will choose better. And because you don't need the same things anymore. Once you love yourself, you're not going to accept those things, and you don't need the same things.
Exactly. So that premarital cleansing, and I had not really, I didn't even put that together. That was an accident. You know, this couple came to me, and then before they was about to get married, and then more couples started coming, and I said, wow, this is pretty interesting that these couples are coming to us to detox before they tie the knot. And guess what? Those couples are still together today, strong. I kid you not. I check in with them and they're still together strong. No sign of any problems.
That's great.
And I was just as shocked myself, because, you know, when we talk about the divorce rate, we want to know, why is the divorce rate so high? It has a lot to do with what people aren't seeing that's happening to them on a mental and emotional level. They go into the next relationship and they haven't really cleared out the past relationship.
Exactly. And that is so important. And that's what we talk about on a lot of the relationship topics. And I have clinical psychologists and everything, social workers, marriage counselors on that do this show. And the thing about it, that, you know, a lot of people, you have all these relationship gurus out here and they're giving advice. And advice is not going to work. Advice is not going to work. And I keep saying it, you have to fix what's inside of you. And now you're even talking about on a hormonal and neurological level. You know, you really have to fix what's inside of you. That's the only way you're going to get something different out of life and out of a mate in a relationship.
Right. That's what we've been missing. And that's been something that's been building up in us all of our life. So that's why if you want something different in your life, you have to become a new person. Because the old person is creating a reality that you're experiencing. That's what I think Dr. Joe Dispenza says. He says that your personality creates your personal reality.
And he also says that you have to remember your future. He says and so the person that's interviewing him said, remember your future. He said, yes, you have to create something new because your mind doesn't know that it hasn't happened yet. You've got to put it in your head and you have to remember your future instead of remembering your past. You remember your future.
And that's why I tell people, I challenge you to live in your imagination and not in your memory. Most of us are living in our memory and not our imagination. Your imagination is the future. Your memory is the past. So if you live in your imagination, you're actually remembering or recreating or pre-creating your future.
Yep.
But if you live in your past, you're recreating your past and it becomes your future.
Yep.
And so it's a matter of shifting. But here's the problem. Most people tend to dwell on those things that affected them negatively the most.
Yep.
You see, not realizing that by dwelling on it, by entertaining it, by sitting alone at home and thinking about it, you're actually bringing it into the creation process, which means at some point, maybe a year down the line, when you least expect it, it will manifest and you'll look up and now you're back in that situation again. You're like, how did I get back here? So creating the awareness is the beginning of people beginning to restructure their lives and clean up some of the stuff that has happened to them in the past. In other words, they have to forgive themselves. They have to forgive the people around them because they're the ones that's kind of controlling everything that's happening in their life. But it's hard for a person to believe that when somebody has just offended them or assaulted them, and it seems like it's a justifiable offense. But even scripture says that blessed is she who is not offended in me. So even justified offense is not necessarily acceptable because you still have the power of proactivity. You can choose your response to someone offending you. You can choose your response to someone assaulting you. Somebody call a Black person the N-word. You can choose to not let that affect you and have a positive reaction to it, a positive response to it. Or you can have a negative reaction to it. That's the choice. You can either have a positive response to a situation, which means you just proacted, or you can have a negative reaction to it, which is just reaction. When you react to something, you're just going off what has happened in the past and how you respond to that. That's your personality. So that's your personality. That's who you are. Somebody say, well, such and such don't like this color. That's who you are. So if you get something that's not the color that you like and you have a certain negative emotion towards it, that's just your personality. Well, what if you decided not to have a negative reaction to something you don't like, but have a positive reaction to something that you don't like? Now you're controlling your biology. Now you're preserving your health because you're not just reacting as you normally do. You're now proacting. You're proacting because you now know that to react is only to create things and make it worse in your system. And so that's the reason you want to manage stress. That's the reason you want to manage negative emotions. Not because you're trying to let the person get away with what they did. No, that's not the case. No, because the person that you have unforgiveness towards, your unforgiveness doesn't hurt them. The unforgiveness is affecting you. Right. You're getting sick because of your unforgiveness towards them. But they're going on in life doing what they, desire to do, not even worrying about your unforgiveness. Yeah, they would prefer maybe you forgive them, but it's not going to affect them health-wise. So that's why you got to do things like forgive. You have to let go. You have to stop having animosity. If somebody do something to you, you just have to be patient. You just have to be, able to look past it. And that's not the easiest thing to do, especially when that ego feels like it has been bruised. If you bruise that ego, it wants to come out and it wants to. I know I felt it a few times. I felt it when somebody, especially when I'm driving. If I'm driving and I, it's always a lot of crazy drivers out there. If somebody's speeding or cutting you off or cutting over, not using their turn signal, then yeah, that's going to make you a little upset because you're trying to have a peaceful drive to your destination. But yet it's always somebody that's driving crazy. And so usually I practice, and this is the cool part. You actually want to start practicing proactivity. if you think about practicing proactivity, then life is going to give you a lot of opportunities to practice. And you know where those opportunities are going to come from? They're coming from your own subconscious, because it's all the negative stuff that you accumulated. So now we're going into how you change it now. You get to practice proactivity with the content of your life. So all the negative experiences that you've ever had, when stuff starts to remanifest or look like it's starting to show back up, all you have to do is first become aware that this is what's happening. And then you practice. You think about, okay, I'm about to practice proactivity. I'm about to practice responding different to this situation than I've ever responded or reacted to it before. And as you start doing that on a daily basis, then at some point, you're going to empty your vessel. You're not going to have any more negative stuff. You're going to be looking for it, but by the time you finish, you will have mastered yourself. Because now anything that shows up, because you're practicing proactivity, now you're able, in a moment's notice, in a moment of time, you're able to shift from a negative energy of reaction to a positive energy of proactivity. Now you're fully controlling your life. You're controlling your body. You're in control of your circumstances. You're never a victim of circumstances anymore. And life is like harmony to you. It's like heaven, because you're drawn to people you want. You're drawn to opportunities. You're drawn all the major things that happens to us in life. And you're happy now. You're no longer feeling depressed because things ain't working out your way. They're not working out your way because you're not putting any work in. You have to put some work in order to change your life, because your life is connected to who you are. So if your life is connected to who you are and you don't like your life, then you need to change who you are. And that's why I like the book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. That's a good title, because we're in the habit of being who we are. We're creatures of habit. And now you know that 90% of your subconscious mind and thoughts is where all the habits are rooted. So if the habits are rooted in your subconscious, then we're going through life on autopilot, just living out old situations and old habits. And every now and again, like if you learn something new, you remember how when you first learned how to drive, and you had to think about putting the turn signal on, you had to think about the brake and the gas pedal, you had to think about everything consciously. Eventually what happens is it became subconscious, because you practiced it. Then the more you practice it, it became, so now you can be in a car with 4 people. It can be a full car. You having a conversation, talking to everybody. You probably not even focusing much on driving because it's just autopilot. So now you've driven about 4 blocks and you don't even realize how you got that far. You don't even remember stopping at a light, but you did stop. You did stop at a light. but it didn't matter, because your body was your subconscious. It was doing the driving for you, because it learned it. You practiced it over and over again. So now you can drive with one hand. You can text. You shouldn't be texting though.
Right.
Some people haven't learned it enough. You need to practice a little bit more. But no, you shouldn't be texting. But some people do text. The reason they text now, if you just learn how to drive, you're not gonna be texting because you're too afraid. You're too afraid to do anything but become conscious of what you're doing. But once that skill becomes subconscious and it's rooted in your personality, then you don't have to think about driving anymore. You don't have to think about anything. And now you're just driving on autopilot. You can go anywhere, drive and talk and do anything. Some women can even do they lips, put on their makeup while they drive. They put the thing down, put the mirror up, put the light on, and then they start putting their makeup on. Before, if you was consciously aware of driving, you wouldn't be doing any of that stuff. And so that's how it is with a lot of habits. We learn things in our upbringing and it becomes subconscious. When it becomes subconscious, it becomes a part of our personality. when it becomes a part of our personality, it becomes a part of our future. And so most of our future is nothing more than our past. That's why they say after a certain age, you don't even really have any new experiences. We don't have any new experiences because we're hardwired based upon who we are.
I try and always have new experiences. I just don't want to live a mundane life. I try hard to always have some new experiences, but I guess traveling and, you know, being with your friends and stuff can become very routine as well.
It's sometimes it can be considered an escape. You know, a lot of times we have escapism, where in order to not think about something, we do something else, especially if it has to do with something that happened in the past relationship. We tend to maybe want to travel or go out or drink or something that's going to take our mind away. So instead of us addressing it directly, we do things to escape it so we won't have to think about it. But even in that sense, you know, even by not thinking about it, it's still there. You have to literally uproot it in order to not experience it at all.
So how do you uproot it again?
Well, there's a scripture that says, whatsoever is good, whatsoever is just, whatsoever is lovely, if it be of good report, if it has any virtue, think on these things. So even the Bible is telling you to think only on those things that are good, lovely, good report, that are honest. It's saying that because it's saying spend your time thinking on that which is positive. You have to consciously and with effort think about that which is positive, because like you said earlier, we will naturally move towards that which is negative. So that's almost like a natural propensity of us to think about that which is negative. So that's something that we now have to deliberately focus on. So in other words, when you make something that's in the dark conscious, then you have control over it. But if it's in the subconscious, then you don't have any control over it. In fact, that's where the devil is. The devil is in people's subconscious. That's why they'll say the devil made me do it. No, that was a desire you had. That was an inclination you had to do something. That wasn't the devil. That was something that was rooted in your personality that caused you to do that. And the reason we say the devil, because we can point the fingers at a devil and say that the devil is working on me. The devil is doing this to me. But really, you know, there's only one power. And that one power actually controls both aspects of light and darkness. Even in scripture, there's a scripture that says, God says, you know, I kill, but I make alive. I wound, but I also heal. And so this is one being telling you all of this stuff. So it's not two powers, it's one power. But if you think that there's two, you live in a world of duality, and therefore you can create an enemy. But when you understand that there's one power and you are connected to that one power, in fact, you're one with that power, then you have the power to control your circumstances. If there are circumstances that you don't like, you can control it. But if you don't know you have control over it, you can't change it. So that's why it's important to accept full control over anything and everything that is happening to you or has happened to you, for the sake of being able to change it. Because it's not enough to just have it and accept it. Because if you want to change your life, you have to change your personality, which means you have to uproot some old habits that was ingrained in you when you was in grade school from your teachers, that was ingrained in you in your family. You know, you may have had some cousins that was kind of bad. You know, they got in trouble all the time. So all of a sudden now you're getting in trouble because you're hanging out with those particular cousins. So we inherit our behavior from other people.
So when in addressing this situation, you know, people who are experiencing some negativity in their lives and don't really know where it's coming from, it might be a good idea, you know, as we tell people to reflect, you know, sit down and look back over your life and just kind of get in touch with what you really have lived through. So in coaching, of course, you know, you have your formative years, and we always talk about So parents know that there are formative years for their kids, but
Right.
somehow those same parents that know that their kids have formative years will say that their formative years don't matter. Your formative years mattered as well. Everything that you saw in during your formative years helped create who you are today. And sometimes we do need to go back and look at what happened in our child. You hear a lot of people like, I don't need to, that was my childhood. I'm grown now. You're grown, but that just means that you are an older version of that child.
Right. And
some
that's
people
usually what's going on.
Stuck.
That's actually what's going on. So you have a lot of adults. You have a lot of adults that are actually still, or let me say, you have a lot of children that are actually living in adult bodies, and these are children. Hold on, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, yeah, these are children in adult bodies that haven't really gotten past some of the things of their past. They just now adults having to deal with some of their childhood fears, some of their childhood beliefs, and they carry them into their adult life, and so it takes a while for them to mature.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time they mature, of course, or think they mature, they're still dealing with some of the childhood issues, which a lot of us are, believe it or not. You know, we have to look back at our childhood, and even me dealing with the absence of my father. You know, even though I never saw him, I still felt a connection to him, and I realized that I had animosity for him not being there, even though I never met him before. And
Wow.
but because I grew up never having seen him, I didn't think it was a big issue until I saw something on TV that triggered this memory from the past, that I actually did have some animosity towards my father, who was not there for me. So, but I resolved it.
And I dealt with, and a lot of people look at me because I, do things like this, and I'm always in the public eye, out front, and all that kind of stuff. I have dealt, because my mom was very critical, so I never felt good enough. So I always sought validation. I wanted my mom to say, "Oh, you're great, you're good." I never got that kind of stuff from her, and so I've gone through my life, especially in my relationships, kind of seeking validation. But in turn, what I did was I also dated people who were critical, like my mother, and so when I look back on that, the reason that I chose different people, it just became very apparent to me. And so I've been working on myself and working on forgiving my mom and forgiving myself and moving forward. But that's why right now I actually am not really dating, because I don't necessarily trust myself to make a good decision yet. Because I've made some not so great decisions. Not that I've chose bad people, but I've chosen them for the wrong reasons. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, we definitely sometimes have to stop fighting it and look back at what was really going on in your life, And if you looked at my family when I was growing up, there was two parents and everything. I went to private school and college prep. You would have thought it was just like the perfect life, the only child got everything.
Right.
But there was still a lot of stuff missing up in there, that people didn't see. So just because you people think you had a great life, you need to really look at what you were going through during those time periods and address that stuff, because it's how we pick other people to be in our lives. They are meeting some need that we have. They're good or bad. Like you just said, good or bad, they're meeting a need that we have.
Exactly. And that's the problem, is that we need to know thyself. The more you know yourself, the more you understand the people that are in your life and why they're in your life. And I did that one year. I just made a list of the people that was in my life, and I put next to them what they represented or what they meant. What was their purpose? One brother in my life, he was integrity, because he was always talking about integrity, keeping my word. Another person was gratitude. So you can actually put a label on the different people in your life and what they mean and what their purpose is in your life. And that will help you to start identifying even you, because most of the relationships you have in your life is a reflection of things that are going on in you. And there's something I want to put on there for people to kind of check out. It's called the the 7 mirrors of relationship.
Oh,
The 7 mirrors
you should be
of
sure to
relationship.
post all of these, post these books and everything in the public group so we can all
Uh,
get this stuff. Post it in the
right.
public
Okay.
group.
So the 7 mirror, that's gonna be good for even, some of the relationship talks you guys have, because these mirrors are real. And there are 7 mirrors of relationship that explains perfectly any type of relationship you have with anybody, any person, any child, any family member. It explains, because that's what we are. We're reflections of each other. The people around you reflect you, or they reflect something in you, or they reflect something you dislike, or something you judge. You see what I'm saying? So knowing these mirrors, knowing how we interact with other people and the role that they play in our lives, will help us to learn more about ourselves. And that's what's most important. You're really learning more about yourself. You're studying you. You're not studying other people, because they make up your universe. So as you study you, you start to draw different people into your world. And that's usually the beginning of a new life, is when you start to realize why the people that are already there are actually there. Once you realize that, then you start to clean up. You start to clean up your psyche, and you start to clean up to the point where now you start drawing and attracting deliberately the people that you actually do want in your life. Because remember what they say about your 6 closest friends and their income? If that your income is constrained by your 6 closest friends or more. I don't know if it may be less than that, but the bottom line is that what they're saying is that the people around you you're a product of their upbringing and their achievements. So if they're not making 6-digit income a year, then you can't expect to do it. If you don't have millionaire friends, then you won't be expected to make $1 million. But as soon as you start having these type of friends, millionaire friends that's making 6 figures, and you're interacting with them on a regular basis, then their spirit begins to come upon you, to the point where now you're starting to have that type of success. You're starting to have that type of reality, but it's based upon the people around you. And so once you become aware that you have the power to reprogram your own subconscious mind, then you're going to begin to deliberately now and intentionally look for the right people to bring into your life, the right friends, the right people to interact with, the right situations to be involved in. In other words, every moment and minute of your day is now purposeful.
Yes.
And when it's purposeful, then you can never be a victim of circumstances, because you're in control of everything that's coming in and out of your life, where we wasn't in control before. You was just living haphazardly, in the dark, blind, growing up. We didn't know nothing about life, how the mind worked. We didn't know nothing about subconscious. We was just living. My mom said, yeah, you should go to this college, you go to that college. The counselor said, you should study this, and you study that. So you're really just living other people's wishes and desires instead of your own. But once you start really knowing who you are, you start having different desires, different wishes, different goals, and you start living for the first time with purpose. You start living intentionally. So now, I have friends that are generating wealth. My good friend Leroy Mack, they call him the safe money expert. Leroy Mack helped me to establish my own bank. So I have my own bank, like Citibank, Bank of America. No, I have my own bank. I can go to my own bank and borrow money and not be taxed on it, anything. It's available to me at any time. So having my own bank, they call this infinite banking concept. And a lot of people may know about that. It's called the infinite banking concept. And it's the same concept that all the other banks use. Fifth Third, Chase, all these banks use this same concept. So when people give them their money, they take your money and they put it into an infinite bank account, and it grows exponentially. They get dividends on it. They get a lot of money, and it's not taxed. There's no taxation on that
I would
money.
love to have him come on the show and talk about that.
You know what? He would, oh, trust me, he would love to talk about that, because it's definitely something that
Well,
we need to
definitely
know.
connect us. Definitely connect
I
us.
will. But yeah, infinite banking. So I say that because, obviously this is a person who knows how to manage money. And so I'm connecting with this person. We good friends. We interacted. We've done a few events together. We've done events together called Health and Wealth. It's like a
Okay.
health and wealth seminar where he talked about creating your own bank. And then I talked about, of course, building health, because that's one thing we all need. We all need good health, and we would all prefer to have wealth. If you had health and wealth, you don't need nothing else. Everything will fall in place after that. But the problem is that most of us are putting our money in different places like 401ks, and those are deferred tax payments. Those are deferred tax. In other words, you won't get taxed on it until later on down the line. But when you're dealing with infinite banking, there is no taxation ever. And that money grows exponentially year after year after year. So if I put 10,000 in it, within 10 years, I'll have $100,000 in my account. So that's something as a people we should be learning about, but we didn't. Only the rich and wealthy knew about that. In fact, who else has an infinite banking account? The president, Joe Biden, he has infinite bank, so he knows about this stuff, but we don't know about this. So what I'm saying is that when I started cleaning out my system, when I started mentally and emotionally detoxifying my body and my mind, I began to draw in the right people into my life that will help take me to a higher level. AC Green sat up. He told me one day, I was in the studio with him, and he said, every month we bring in about $600,000 through this show. Every month, not every year, every month.
Wow.
And my mouth dropped. I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. But that's normal to him. So when you have friends like that, and that's something like that is normal to you, then it becomes your norm. It becomes your new norm. Like, oh yeah, I make 500, 600,000 a month, no problem. Because that's now your new norm. You're now deliberately putting yourself in the space with people who are thinking a different way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But you're doing it deliberately. You're not now a big, so you're not going to find yourself just at some event and everybody's asking for money and a lot of poverty. You're not going to find yourself there anymore. Not that you don't love those people or appreciate them, or not that they're not friends. It's just that you now understand the dynamics of laws as it pertains to the mind. You want to go higher. You don't want to stay low. And a lot of our friends sometimes can anchor us down and create this burden on us, which causes us to not be able to achieve the dreams that we really set out to do. So you're gonna, like you was joking before, you're gonna lose some people out your life once you start cleaning your system out mentally and emotionally.
And it's
because
okay.
these are right. It's okay, because they were the ones, in a sense, anchoring you down. The sad part is sometimes women find out that it's their husband. Sometimes men find out that it's their wife.
I've heard of that happening before.
Oh man, I had a young lady come in. This was years ago, and she started, cleansing and detoxifying, and I thought everything was great in her marriage. She called us a few weeks later and said she had gotten separated from her husband, and we were like, "What happened?" She like, "No, that's what I wanted to do. I just couldn't, because he was a pastor, and when a woman is married to a pastor, that pull that he has on her is strong. It's hard to break away in that type of relationship."
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been an awesome show. Thank you so much, Eric. That was a great topic. When you told me mental, emotional detoxing, the toxins or whatever, I was like, I wonder where he's going with that. He's going to tell us that stress causes high blood pressure. I'm like, we know stress causes high blood pressure, but you just really took this to a whole other level. And I just want you to know, and our listeners, that your first intro show will be replaying during the Thanksgiving holiday. And I will let everybody know when that is. Today is November 18th. If you are listening to a replay of this show, be sure and catch the live shows on Mondays from 7 to 9, Thursdays and Fridays from 12 to 2. Do you have any final words you want for the listeners, and tell them how to get in touch with you real quick?
Well, you can definitely give me a call at 773-851-8756. That's 773-851-8756. That's a direct line to our company. If you're dealing with anything from mental, emotional, physical issues and ailments, any degenerative diseases, all of that stuff can be eradicated and reversed. You just have to approach it systematically and holistically. And I want to let everybody know that, may the Lord God bless you and keep you, cause his light to shine upon you, be gracious to you, show you favor, and grant you everlasting peace.
All right. So that was Eric Prince. And right now we are going